The breeze smelled faintly of hyacinth and beeswax polisher, strange mix that Lila Everly would forever associate with spring cleaning and ballroom preparation. From her window in the west wing of Evermere Hall, she could see the grounds coming to life. Gardeners pruning hedges, footmen hoisting lanterns, and somewhere below, a flurry of ribbons being fastened to the ballroom's arched windows. The first ball of the season was always a grand affair, but this one carried a strange weight in her chest. She leaned her elbows on the sill and looked down at the spot beneath the chestnut tree. Mud and marigolds, she whispered to herself. That had been their kingdom, hers and Jamie's. Summers long past, they'd ruled as woodland sovereigns, with crowns of dandelions and thrones of damp moss. She remembered his laughing eyes, and the way his boots always squelched deeper into puddles than hers dared. He'd gone away when they were just 14, first to school, then the army, and then nothing. 8 years without a single letter. "Lila?" Her mother's voice called from the doorway. "You're not still in your day dress, are you?" Lila turned, smoothing the front of her muslin gown. "Only for a moment. I was remembering." Lady Everly gave her a tolerant smile. "Well, remember in silk, darling. The guests are arriving soon. Your hair is halfway to wild." Lila's maid arrived behind her, with pins already clutched between her teeth. "Come sit, miss. We'll have you fine in no time." As they fussed over her hair and adjusted the fall of her lilac gown, Lila stared at her reflection. She had grown, certainly, but had she changed? She felt as if she were two selves layered together, the girl who once caught frogs and wished on dandelions, and the young lady now required to smile graciously and speak only after proper introductions. Tonight, the world would come to Evermere. Dukes and debutantes, matrons and merchants, her first true season, her debut ball, but part of her still longed for the boy who once called her Marigold. The ballroom sparkled like a jewel box come to life. Every candlelit sconce flickered with promise. Every chandelier shimmered above the crowd like 1,000 fireflies caught in crystal. Lila stood at the top of the staircase beside her mother, trying not to fidget with her gloves. "Smile," Lady Everly murmured behind her fan. "You're the hostess, not a lamb at slaughter." "Feels like both," Lila replied through clenched teeth. One by one, carriages arrived and deposited their glittering contents ladies in pastel gowns, gentlemen in formal coats, all carrying that particular air of practiced delight. The musicians began tuning, and laughter already bubbled through the crowd like champagne. "Miss Lila Everly," the steward announced as she descended the stairs. A few heads turned. She smiled automatically, giving the practiced half-curtsy her mother had drilled into her bones. A young gentleman with alarmingly shiny boots bowed and requested the first dance. She accepted, of course. One must. But as they waltzed, Lila's eyes wandered. She couldn't help it. She felt like someone was just out of reach, and then she saw him. A tall man had just stepped through the main doors. Broad-shouldered, with sun-kissed golden-brown hair and a calm, assured gait. His coat was a rich forest green that matched the flecks in his eyes, though she was too far to see that yet. He handed his gloves and hat to the footman, then scanned the room like one who had seen better ballrooms and judged this one fair. He looked familiar. No, more than familiar. He looked like she lost the beat of the dance. "Miss Everly?" her partner asked. "Terribly sorry," she said with a hasty smile. A slipper slipped. When the music ended, she curtsied and quickly escaped to the edge of the room, pretending to admire the floral arrangements. But her eyes found him again. The man was speaking to her father now, relaxed, even warm. And then he turned. Lila's breath caught those eyes, that crooked half-smile. No, it couldn't be Jamie, but it couldn't be Jamie. Jamie was all elbows and mischief, with floppy curls and muddy knees. This stranger looked like something from a Byron poem, and then he bowed toward her. "Miss Everleigh," he said, voice low and steady. "Might I claim the next?" She stared, trying to find even one trace of the boy she remembered. But his eyes, those were his. Just older, deeper. He held her gaze like he was waiting for her to see it. "Yes," she said faintly, "of course." He offered his arm, and she took it. The warmth of his hand through her glove startled her. As they stepped into the dance, she found herself unable to speak. A dozen questions warred for precedence. "Where have you been? Why didn't you write? Why do you look like sin and summer and every foolish thing I ever wished for at once?" But all she said was, "You're new to the area, I think." He smiled. Something like that. They moved through the steps of the dance, eyes catching on turns, breath hitching on each glide. Around them, the room faded into waltz-time silence. She wanted to ask. He clearly knew who she was. But he was waiting. For what? The dance ended. He released her hand slowly, deliberately. "A pleasure," he said, bowing. And he was gone. Jamie Loxley leaned against a pillar near the refreshment table, sipping champagne he scarcely tasted. He had seen, the moment Lila recognized him, a flicker in her eyes, a gasp of breath barely masked by civility. That slight falter in her step had been immensely satisfying. Still, it was dangerous, this game. He hadn't expected her to look so. No, better not to think it. He adjusted his cravat. It felt absurdly tight, as if it sensed the increasing pressure in his chest. Was it longing? Guilt? He wasn't sure. He'd watched her glide across the ballroom like she'd been born for it, elegant, confident, with a soft grace that had grown from the wild, tomboyish girl who once tried to climb the orchard wall in petticoats. He took another sip. "You're staring," came a familiar voice at his elbow. It was Hugh Selby, rakish as ever and already smirking. "Observing," Jamie corrected, not bothering to hide his gaze. "I haven't seen her in 8 years. Yes, and it appears those 8 years have only enhanced your affliction." Jamie didn't reply. He couldn't, not when his thoughts kept circling back to the dance toe, the way her gloved hand fit into his, to the cool reserve in her voice that hadn't matched the warmth of her eyes. Across the ballroom, Lila leaned against a column and fanned herself. The heat of the room had little to do with the temperature. Who was that man? And more importantly, why had he seemed so amused? "Lila, are you unwell?" Lady Marwick, a friend of her mother's, had appeared at her side. Lila straightened. "Just warm. I think I need a moment of air. There's always a draft in the music room." Lila smiled politely and nodded, but as she turned, her path was suddenly blocked. "Miss Everleigh," said a voice that brushed against her like wind on water. Jamie. Now, face to face, she could no longer deny it. The crooked grin, the golden brown hair, though it no longer flopped into his eyes, and those same hazel eyes now, shadowed with something older, something experienced. "I believe I owe you a proper greeting," he said. Lila blinked. "I'm sorry, have we? It's been a while." She tilted her head, her voice cool. "You certainly dance like a stranger." He laughed. "Not the insult I expected." She pressed her lips together, too aware of the proximity, the scent of citrus and clean linen. "Then perhaps you should stop behaving like one." Jamie bowed slightly. "Would you honor me with another dance?" She hesitated. Everything in her heart said yes. Everything in her pride said absolutely not. "Perhaps later," she said, and moved past him. Behind her, Jamie watched her go. She hadn't forgiven him. Good. It meant she cared. The supper room shimmered with candlelight, silver platters gleaming beneath domed lids and champagne, bubbling in tall flutes. Lila sat between her cousin Tabitha, newly arrived from Wiltshire and awkward in a rose-coloured gown, and Lord Edgecombe, a man twice her age who thought himself charming. "Miss Everley, do you know," Edgecombe droned, "that this year's asparagus crop is said to be the finest in decades?" "What a thrill," Lila said, taking a large sip of wine. Jamie sat diagonally across from her, deep in conversation with her father. He looked perfectly at ease, as if he'd never been gone, as if he hadn't disappeared from her life without a single explanation. Their eyes met over the soup course. He raised a brow. She looked away. When the stewed quail arrived, Jamie finally rose and made his way around the table. He paused at her side. "Forgive the interruption," he said to Lord Edgecombe, "but I believe Miss Everley dropped her smile." Edgecombe blinked. "I beg your pardon. She seems uncharacteristically somber," Jamie continued. "A tragic thing for a hostess at her own ball." Lila turned, frowning. "You are remarkably forward." "Am I wrong?" She gave him a warning glance, then rose. "Tabitha, come with me, won't you?" Tabitha, eyes wide, followed. They stepped into the side corridor that led to the library. Once alone, Lila turned. "It is you, Jamie Loxley." He stepped from the shadows. "I wondered how long you'd pretend." "I wasn't pretending," she said. "I was trying to understand. You vanished. For years. No letter, no word." "I wrote," he said quietly. "Every month for 2 years." She froze. "What?" "I sent them to Evermere. I never heard back." She stared. "But I never received anything." He pulled something from his Kawata-faded envelope. Her handwriting. "You did write me. Once." Lila took the letter with trembling hands. "I slipped this into the post bag." Then someone kept our words from reaching each other. Silence stretched between them. "Jamie," she whispered. He stepped closer. "I never forgot you, Lila, even when I tried." She looked up at him and remembered. The day before he left, he'd tried to kiss her beneath the chestnut tree. She'd turned away, giggling. He'd flushed, mumbled something about being silly, and fled. She hadn't known it would be the last time she saw him, until tonight. "I missed you," she said. His voice was hoarse. "Then let me earn my way back." Her breath caught. He was still Jamie, but more, and her heart didn't know how to guard against either. "We'll see," she said. "This time, you don't get to disappear." He smiled. And for a moment, it was like marigolds in the mud all over again. The morning after the ball, the whispers began. "Did you see the way Miss Everley danced with that gentleman? He's Lord Darnley's heir, I hear. Spent years abroad. Such shoulders!" Lila sat at the breakfast table, pretending not to hear the chatter between her mother and Lady Gainsford. She buttered her toast with unnecessary precision. Tabitha, across the table, was reading a book upside down. "You met him, didn't you?" her mother asked. Lila blinked. "Who?" "That handsome man from the ball." "Jamie, was it?" Lila bit into her toast. "We danced." "Only once," Lady Gainsford said. "Surely he'll call." Lila stood. "Excuse me, I need to see to the garden." That evening, at Lady Inverness's soirée, Jamie was the center of attention. Lila watched from a corner as debutantes giggled and fluttered fans at him. He seemed bored. When their eyes met, he inclined his head. She promptly turned away. Moments later, someone asked her to dance. She agreed out of sheer defiance. Jamie watched, hands clenched behind his back. "You're going to grind your teeth to dust," Hugh murmured beside him. "She's dancing with a man who uses too much cologne, and you, my friend, are acting like a spurned governess." Jamie shot him a look. Hugh grinned. "If you want her, Loxley, stop brooding and start courting." After the dance, Lila stepped out onto the balcony. She needed air. The door creaked behind her. She didn't turn. "I must say, Miss Everley," Jamie said, "you lead a man in circles." "Only those who follow poorly," he chuckled. "Touché." She looked at him, the night wind teasing a curl from her updo. "Why are you really here, Jamie?" He hesitated. "To see you," she blinked, "and to find out if the girl I couldn't forget became the woman I hoped she would." Her heart stuttered. And, he stepped closer, she exceeded expectation. The party at Lord and Lady Harrow's was grander than most crystal chandeliers, swan pastries, music from a real quartet. Leela's feet ached from dancing, and her smile was beginning to feel brittle. She slipped outside and found the terrace garden bathed in moonlight. The scent of roses and night-blooming jasmine floated on the breeze. She wandered along the stone path, finding a bench beneath the arbor. Moments later, footsteps crunched behind her. She didn't turn. "You follow me more than my shadow," she murmured. Jamie chuckled. "You keep wandering into moonlight. It's not my fault." He sat beside her, careful not to touch. "I miss this," he said. "What, English weather and bug bites?" "No, this. You." Lila glanced at him. "You knew what to say, even as a boy." "And yet, I rarely said it." Silence fell, soft and heavy. "Why didn't you kiss me, that last day?" He hesitated. "Because I thought you laughed to spare me, because I was afraid." She turned to him. "You were a silly boy." And now, she studied him. The moon carved lines of shadow on his face. Still silly, but taller, and maybe a little braver. He smiled, and she smiled back. He reached out, gently brushing a leaf from her shoulder. "Marigold," he said softly. Her breath caught. They leaned in. "Miss Everley," came a call from the path. A footman. "Your mother is asking for you." They sprang apart. Lila stood, cheeks flushed. Jamie rose. "Tomorrow, a walk in the park?" She nodded, and ran. Behind her, Jamie exhaled slowly. It wasn't a kiss, but it was something beginning. Lila barely heard the music as she re-entered the ballroom. Her heart thudded in her ears louder than the violins. The air felt different now, as though something had shifted, something permanent. Across the room, Jamie had returned to his corner, eyes scanning the crowd until they found her. When they did, he smiled. Not a grin, not a smirk, something quieter, softer, a promise unspoken. She looked away. Tabitha sidled up, fanning herself clumsily. "You were gone a while. Everything all right?" "Yes," Lila said too quickly. "Just needed air." Tabitha looked suspicious. "You weren't with someone, were you?" "Tabitha." "Just wondering. There's talk, you know." Of course there was. Lila had heard the whispers, the rising tide of speculation. If Jamie was truly Lord Darnley's heir, he was one of the season's biggest catches. That meant attention, competition, scrutiny. She wasn't sure she was ready for any of it. Later that evening, she stepped into the drawing room to catch her breath and found Jamie already there, standing before a painting of Evermere's founders. "Admiring our noble ancestors," she teased. Jamie turned. "This one looks like he's judging my intentions." Lila moved closer. And should he? Jamie's gaze never left hers. Perhaps there was a beat. "Do you remember the summer we built the raft?" she asked suddenly. "We tried to float it across the stream, and it sank like a stone." Jamie chuckled. "You swore me to secrecy, claimed we'd engineered the greatest naval disaster since the Armada." Lila laughed. "I still have the splinter scar." He reached for her hand, gently tracing her palm. Sure enough, the faint mark remained. He looked up at her. "We were children," he said. "And yet, I don't think I ever felt closer to someone." Her breath hitched. "Then why did you leave without saying goodbye?" she whispered. His jaw tensed. "Because I was scared that I'd say too much, that you'd laugh again. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know it mattered." Jamie stepped closer. It always mattered. Their eyes locked. But the sound of voices in the hall broke the spell. They stepped apart just as Lady Marwick entered, peering suspiciously. Lila straightened her gown. "Yamye bowed. Until tomorrow, Marigold," he murmured. And he was gone. The next morning, Lila sorted through a stack of old sheet music in the drawing room, hoping to distract herself. Instead, a yellowed envelope fell from between the pages of a Mozart sonata. She recognized it instantly. Her own childish handwriting, addressed to Jamie. Heart pounding, she opened it. "Dear Jamie," it began. "I miss you already. If you see any foxes, tell them I still like them best. Come back before the apples ripen. Yours, Lila." She closed her eyes. She had sent it. She knew she had, but it had never reached him. And now, knowing he'd written too, something inside her cracked open. Meanwhile, across town, Jamie paced Hugh Selby's study. "I nearly kissed her again," Jamie confessed, flopping into an armchair. "Twice." Hugh, sharpening a quill, raised a brow. "Nearly? Good God, Locksley. Are you in courtship or fencing?" Jamie groaned. "She's wary. I hurt her, and I didn't even know it." "So tell her the truth. You wrote, she wrote, someone meddled. Now, fix it." Jamie rubbed his face. "You make it sound simple. Because it is. You're lucky. Most men don't get a second chance." Jamie sat up straighter. Hugh was right. The season wouldn't last forever, and he couldn't let Lila slip away. That afternoon, as Lila walked in the Evermere gardens, Jamie found her beneath the willow tree by the stream. "I kept this," he said, holding out a folded scrap. It was the letter, her letter. Faded ink and fox drawings still visible. She took it carefully. "You really kept it. Every move, every year, I packed it. Like a promise." Lila's eyes shimmered. "I found it again today." They sat side by side, the summer breeze rustling the branches around them. "Jamie," she said, "what do you want from me?" He looked at her, his voice steady. "A chance." She was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, "Then take it, but don't waste it." He smiled, relief flooding him, and somewhere, in the tall grass near the water, a fox darted by unnoticed, still her favorite. By the final ball of the week, Evermere Hall was ablaze with candlelight, the grand chandelier glinting like starlight. Lila descended the staircase with practiced poise, but her heart thudded like a drum. Jamie was already there, speaking with Hugh Selby near the musicians. He looked as handsome as ever, his dark brown hair brushed back, a sapphire pin at his cravat. He looked every inch the man ladies whispered about, but when his eyes found hers, his breath caught, plain as a boyish blush. Hugh clapped him on the shoulder and stepped away with a knowing smirk. Jamie crossed the floor slowly, every step precise, as if afraid she might vanish. "Miss Everleigh," he said, bowing. "Captain Locksley," she replied, dipping her head. "Would you grant me a second dance?" She hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. "I suppose it would be proper." As the musicians struck up a new waltz, Jamie led her to the center of the floor. When he took her hand, it felt like everything else, music, crowd, candlelight, fell away. "You're quiet," he murmured, eyes fixed on hers as they moved. "I'm trying not to fall," she said. "You never have," he replied. "Not really," she blinked. "You always knew how to flatter." "No, Lila." His grip on her hand tightened slightly. "I always knew how to lie. I told myself I left because I had to, that the timing was wrong, that it didn't matter. And now?" He leaned in just enough for her to feel his breath. Now I know I was a coward. You were never just a memory to me. You were the memory. Around them, dancers spun, laughter rang out, but Lila barely noticed. Her cheeks flushed and her voice faltered. "Too thought you forgot me." "I couldn't if I tried." They finished the dance in silence, but when the final note played and the dancers applauded, they didn't part immediately. Across the ballroom, Tabitha nudged Hugh and whispered, "Well, that looks promising." Hugh grinned. "Took the idiot long enough." The moon hung low over Evermere as guests began to depart. Lila stood by the balcony windows, watching carriages disappear into the night. Her dance card, mostly empty by choice, hung from her wrist like a ribbon of decisions made. Jamie approached slowly. "I was hoping you hadn't vanished, only hiding." "May I?" he asked, nodding to the bench beside her. She gave a tiny smile. "You already sat through one dance, brave enough for a bench too?" He laughed and sat. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jamie said quietly, "I've thought of all the things I should say. Apologies, declarations. I had a speech, actually. Hugh helped edit it." She smiled. "And I'm throwing it out. Because all I really want to say is, Lila Everly, will you let me court you? Properly. With letters this time. Flowers. Long walks where we argue about foxes and naval disasters." She looked at him, face unreadable. "And if I say no, I'll keep asking," he said. "Unless you tell me to stop, I'll try not to be too annoying." Lila tilted her head. "And the vanishing? The leaving? Without writing part?" He held up both hands. "Never again. Even if I'm shipwrecked, I'll send a message in a bottle." She let out a laugh, soft and true. Then, quietly, "Yes, you may court me." Jamie exhaled, then stood and offered his hand. "Then let's begin with a stroll under moonlight." She placed her hand in his, and they walked into the garden once more. Behind them, at the ballroom doors, a young woman stood in the shadows, her gown too tight, her expression wary. Tabitha, watching with a strange glint in her eye. "Country girls don't win fairy tales," she muttered to herself, then paused. "But maybe, with a little help." She turned and disappeared down the hallway, already planning, and thus the season of surprises had only just begun. Enjoyed Lila and Jamie's story? Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to StoryTunesLabX for more heartfelt Regency romances in the Season of Surprises series. This is Story 1 of Season of Surprises, a lightly linked series of romantic Regency makeovers and heartfelt reunions. Each episode stands alone. Watch in any order. Be sure to subscribe to know as soon as Story 2 of 5 in the Season of Surprises series is published.